Hi, welcome back to Business Ethics. My name is Tom. I'm still your instructor. This week, we are looking at Chapter 1 in our text, and my lectures will not be just a review over the contents of the book. That's kind of the purpose of the active reading assignments. So you get all the kind of content that's going on there. In my notes and in these videos, I will be just highlighting some important features and kind of prioritizing things a little bit, framing things up for us to know what to look for. Um, so let me start off by just mentioning a few things about the book and a couple of distinctions that they make. Um, the book, quite frankly, is not very good with ethical theory. It glosses over many things. It makes distinctions that are not quite accurate, but it is very helpful for the practical things about business. What a corporate structure kind of looks like. What are the kind of buzzwords you need to know about? References to the kinds of training and HR and the role of, codes of conduct and all these kinds of things. So that's all really good stuff, and they also have really good examples. But one distinction I want to kind of start off um, mentioning is they make a distinction between ethics and morals. And they think that morals are more of like an individual moral code, right? Just something my opinions about what are right or wrong. And then ethics is more like a group level norms. That is not a distinction that's very prominent at all in ethical theory or thought about ethics. And I think there's good reason to think that that's not really a tenable distinction. But so I just want to kind of shy away from that at the outset. They make the distinction, we can recognize it, but I don't want to sink our teeth into it. I think it'll take us too far off track. We'll be concerned with ethics. We're going to be concerned with the idea of a universal or at least socially shared sense of right and wrong. Okay. Um, and but another distinction that they make that is important that we will deal with quite a bit here is the distinction between morals and or ethics and laws, right? Laws and morality. There's a huge overlap here, but they are not equivalent notions, right? The law is, a legal matter where, we have a government that has decided on certain policies that we implement, and we have law enforcement that enforces these laws and so on and so forth. Ethics is a little bit different. We think that our ethics definitely influences our lawmaking and law enforcement, but the laws are not always a completely accurate representation of what we think is ethical. And the easiest way to see this is to think about how we change laws, right? Oftentimes, we either remove a law or add a new law based on ethical grounds, right? And that distinction makes sense to you. You can say that this law is not ethical, right? And reject it based on that. That you wouldn't be able to do that if laws and ethics were the same thing, right? And in business ethics, we will see that because there's a lot of legal constraints on businesses. And there is a question about whether or not those legal constraints should be endorsed as ethical constraints, right? So those are two important distinctions I just want to highlight at the outset. But really, the meat of this chapter has to do with the distinction or the conflict that we talked about last week, or last video, which is this idea between a profit first conception of business versus a purpose first conception of business. Now, the book talks about the benefits of being an ethical business, right? And because it is a business ethics text, they're going to motivate that, and then they're kind of going to go down that road. So they kind of opt for a purpose first conception of business. And they give a number of reasons for thinking that this is the right way to go. Um, and I think they're all viable reasons. Um, so, for example, having ethical problems in your business can lead to all kinds of other problems, and it might ultimately lead to unsuccessful business, right? There are lots of um, examples of this, in terms of problems that arise. If you have all kinds of employees that are filing lawsuits, and customers that are filing lawsuits, and companies that are coming after you for, you know, um, unfair competition and all kinds of things like this can be a huge burden on your business, right? It can affect your reputation, where customers might not want to come to your business and use your business. It might make investors weary of continuing to invest with you. It might, prevent new investors from coming. It might also, lower your pool for new employees, right? If you get a reputation of being a bad place to work, then people might just go somewhere else, right? And then you have a shortage of talent. And so all these things, I think, some companies actually have, hundreds of lawsuits going on at a given time. And that can be very costly. And there's all kinds of, other issues that might just lead to you not being able to be a good business, right? And so the other kind of angle to having a purpose-driven business, or purpose-first concept of your business and running your business in that way, is, sustainability, right? So the idea is making the right decisions will, and doing things the right way, treating people, your employees well, having above board investing practices, accounting practices, is going to make you more of a sustainable company over years, where you have more regular growth, right? As opposed to cutting corners and um, getting to a place where you're increasing your profits dramatically for a quarter or two, right? But then you're not able to maintain that. So that is all part of an argument for a purpose first conception of business. And of course, that's a lot of what we'll be looking at. What does that mean, and how does that function in terms of your corporate structure and your business structure. um, Now, the counter to this, which is why I say it's a live debate, is all the companies out there that do underhanded things that are extremely successful, right? Um, Uber is an example of a company that has a terrible reputation for being a toxic workplace, at least in the corporate structure, right? I mean, and how they treat contract workers in terms of drivers is a whole other issue. But Uber is also very open about the fact that they are not a very friendly workplace, right? And they kind of say that this is what innovation's about, right? It has to be a little bit dog eat dog, and they're obviously very successful, right? Um, there are other companies that we see that go through all kinds of scandals, right? Wells Fargo had a couple of different scandals. They seem to be doing fine. Um, there are oil companies that have terrible reputations for doing all kinds of things to the environment, but they seem to, trudge on. So if you're considering all these things, then there's a question about whether or not, a purpose driven business is really the right way to go, right? Lots of people think that openly that you should just go for um, profits, right? And that is the real value of a business, right? That's the value that drives a business. And so, again, I want you to kind of consider that. There's a couple of questions that I ask about this, looking at our buying practices and looking at companies that are successful despite all kinds of ethical infractions. And so I really want to deepen this question a little bit and continue to consider it a little bit. Yeah, so that's it for this week. And I will be talking with you soon. All right.